at revolution.radio, freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio station on the globe. We stand upon the right side of history.
General Homer, you've got to get us out of here now! I won't let you down. I won't let you down, son.
Revolution.
And good morning. This is Thursday, March 6th in the year of all of us, 2025. It's already March 6th, the month that promises to be a very tumultuous month. Today I'm going to discuss a topic that this might be one of my worst radio shows because it's a topic I know so much about that I didn't feel the need to even have one type of note made. And I'm finding these kind of radio shows where I'm just not preparing at all to be, they're therapeutic, it's good practice. And it's really good practice for fielding questions on the spot. If you end up in a more public place, you're going to be asked questions, and the questions are going to be aimed at discrediting you, usually for some type of political reason, and usually for some type of political bully. So the topic of today, it definitely isn't politics. The topic of today is dealing with bullies, and I have had very intimate experience with dealing with different kinds of bullies. And before I get into that, I want to say if you gain value from anything that I'm saying or any of the radio hosts say here on revolution.radio, please go to the donation tabs, Freedom Slips, and there's multiple ways to donate. If you have extra, please give a little extra. That's what keeps us on the air and being able to bring what I consider to be real alternative news to you. There's a lot of conspiracy analysts on here who are actually deep critical thinkers and think a little bit outside the box of what's really going on in the world and the nature of our actual reality. Hold on one second. Because I experienced many spiritual, supernatural things that I now call simply natural as I begin to understand the nature of reality a little bit better. I'm still only about halfway there, but compared to your average person, I'm like a tenured professor in what's really going on in the world. And on a ground level, we all at one point in our life or another have to deal with people who are bullies. And I'm going to be relaying a very personal story about a bully today. And there's different types of bullies, but they all have one thing in common. Okay, they all have one thing in common. They're cowards, plain and simple. And the two different kinds of bullies that you will have, well, there's actually three because there's an overlapping kind. You have the kind of, and oh, let me predicate this. Let me predicate something. I realize there is a political guy in office right now that a lot of people call a bully. Okay, well, whoever's calling him a bully is absolutely correct. But anything that I'm about to say doesn't have to do with anybody who's in political office. Some of the things that I'll say today is going to sound a lot like politicians. In fact, one of these categories who I would consider to be the non-physical kind of bully, they're the psychological bully. They're the person that can't actually even be capable of physically bullying anybody. Instead, they use very dark manipulations and narcissistic, sociopathic tactics to be a bully, and gaslighting and all these different things that they do, and they're trying to do it on a big level to us. Those are the bullies that the majority of the puppeticians out there fall into. So if I say anything today that kind of resonates with anyone who's currently in office, I'm not in your cult. I don't vote. It's just a mere coincidence. What I'll go on to say about politicians is there's probably only a handful of them that could actually even have the ability to physically bully anybody. And they couldn't even physically bully a whole lot of people, but there might be a handful of people who can actually physical bully who are in politics. I think of the Russian president Putin. He was with the what was he with? The KGB. So that's our equivalent of the CIA. He was trained. Plus, he's a black belt in judo. He could probably be a physical bully to quite a few people. You know, we've got some guy with an eye patch. I guess he used to be in the Navy SEALs. SEALs can't really fight any better than anyone else, but they usually have a great amount of fitness. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was training a couple of different Navy SEALs, and let me frame that properly. I was never attached to any military unit in an official capacity to train Navy SEALs. Okay, I was Marine infantry. So I don't want anyone getting the wrong idea. But as a civilian martial arts instructor, you're going to have a lot of different military and police who want to take martial arts. And what I noticed about the SEALs is they just caught on a little bit quicker. They had good fitness levels. I mean, excellent fitness levels. But when it came down to hard sparring, they just were really fit at getting their butt kicks. Usually in the military, unarmed combat is really made to develop character, and it is a last resort. So there's not a whole lot of them that I'd be afraid of in a unarmed fight, but those same people I wouldn't want to go gun on gun in any given building or the woods, because they are trained to take lives. They're not sport combat fighters. And I pray none of them have to go take any lives for what's going on in the world currently, because all wars right now, everything in the world going on right now is completely immoral. And I know why you guys took your oaths too. The same thing with order followers. You guys are going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I know a lot of you are good people. I'd say stand down from your jobs. Sooner or later, with the things coming up, you're going to have to step across that line and stand shoulder to shoulder with your civilian counterparts that you actually took an oath to protect. Okay? And again, back to the bully thing, the things that bullies do is completely in opposition to natural law. Completely in opposition to natural law. So the first category of a bully is that person who's a physical bully. They enjoy actually physically intimidating and bullying other people. And their main stage of how they bully people is they want to do it in a physical in an intimidation type of capacity. They would rather scare their opponents with their righteous anger and their temper and their indignation into submission of some kind or another. And to me, that's the easiest bully to defeat. Because as soon as you physically stand up to that bully and let them know you don't care about their physical attributes, you know, they might be bigger, they might have some muscles, it doesn't matter. They're all bullies when they run up against somebody who's willing to fight them. start having second thoughts. Okay. I'll give you a story. I was only in like the 6th or 7th grade. And in the Cleveland Public Schools, right, go right around 12 o'clock, we'd have lunch and we'd be outside for about a half hour on recess. Just running around, playing football. Kids go outside on recess, do whatever. And there was this dude who was a lot bigger than me. And for whatever reason, I don't remember, this was a long time ago. On Monday, me and him got into a fight and he beat my ass. So, okay, that sucked. You know, when you're in school, you got reps and stuff like that. You don't want to be getting beat up in front of anybody. But I didn't really care. I was just mad that he beat me up. So the next day, I tried to avoid him a little bit, and he came back over into my area and started talking, what we would say on the street, just talking shit. And I was like, screw it, let's go. So I got a shot at on him that time, and I got beat up again. And it's important to note this guy was probably about, at the time, he was probably as tall as my stepdad, but he wasn't a man. He was still a kid. And I, as I've said before, I'd been beat up by my stepdad so many times, who actually could box and just was a very violent person, that no kid was going to intimidate me. And it kind of stuck with me almost the rest of my life, pretty much. And then there was a third day. And on the third day, we're out there, and I didn't even wait. I walked right up towards him. He looked at me at the last second. I punched him right in the face. We got into a fight. I got a few more shots in, but he beat my ass again. We got broken apart, blah, blah, blah. Went to the office. They didn't automatically suspend you when you were in the 6th grade back when I was a kid. I'm glad they let us roughhouse a little bit, because to me today, what's going on in schools, especially with the millennial generation, and I'm Generation X, so don't get me confused as a whatever. They always confuse us with the boomers. The millennials, they're kind of the most passive aggressive generation I've ever seen. And the only way I can describe it as, and again, I don't mean to be speaking in such a raw type of way, using the language that I use, because whenever I'm going to use profanity, a lot of times if I'm not emotional, which I'm not right now, I don't use it. So if I'm going to use it, it's really, really on purpose. It's meant to be used. But a lot of the millennials today operate in this area of what I call bitch assness. They're whiny, little, self-entitled, just problem avoiders and problem starters all at the same time. They're passive aggressive. They're passive aggressive bullies, many of them. I'm going to get to that one next. So on Thursday, I came out and I started walking towards this dude. He see me walking towards him, and he's like, "Man, I don't want to fight no more." He's like, "You're cool. You're cool, man. I don't want to fight no more." So the moral of the story is even though I was losing every fight, and I probably would have continued to lose these fights, this dude was a lot bigger than me, and the dude could fight, the moral of the story is they really don't want to continue fighting people who are willing to fight back. There's easier prey out there. Okay. And this was sort of like maybe a little bit of street respect. He realized I wasn't going to be cowed or back down from him. Unfortunately, when we get older, fighting is illegal and a lot more dangerous, because it's not just getting beat up and people break you up. When adults fight, it can be a lot more serious. I'm taking a sip of my coffee. So the physical kind of bully usually has a selection process. They want to make themselves look cool to others. They like to act. They're actors. They want to act out and act tough. They're not prepared for resistance. Okay. And a lot of times we have to have that sacred gift of righteous anger to give resistance. And sometimes that takes courage, because anytime you're going to be fighting somebody who's being a bully, there's going to be a little element of fear present, even if you're angry. For me, I get really angry, but then the anger is focused. Okay. We have to work on maintaining focused anger and not just letting it turn into blind rage. When I become focused, I'm actually more dangerous. My training kicks in. You train in the martial arts, you take a hit, and you become more focused because of it. You don't go into a blind rage. There's an MMA fighter. Oh my God, what's his name? I don't follow it very closely. I've been in the martial arts my whole life, which is why I don't follow MMA as closely. Just like as a cop, you wouldn't catch me, off duty watching cop shows. I just wasn't interested. I do watch certain fights, but for whatever reason, this person, I think his first name is Sean. Not sure. I'm not sure, but he's a perfect example. And he's a well-known fighter. He actually had a similar childhood to me. He's a well-known fighter. When he takes a shot, he just acknowledges the shot, and there's no other emotional. There's nothing emotional that comes over him about it. He just keeps staying focused on his target. And that's important when you are going to fight a bully, because you might fight a bully who can fight. But I'm going to tell you, by large, most of them are punks. Most of them are only going to be tough to certain people, okay? Because they really fall into another category, the third category I'm going to get into. The second category is really the non-physical bully, because they're incapable of being a physical bully. They're usually in a position of power of some kind, but they don't always have to be in a position of power. This person is somebody more likely than not in a position of power or authority. I think of somebody like Bill Gates. If anyone in the listening audience can get beat up by Bill Gates, I would suggest you need to really go train and get some exercise in and do something physical with your life, because I don't think Bill Gates is capable of physically beating up any person on this planet. Yet his policies, his passive aggressive, neutral kind of, you can't narrow him down to any type of thing he says type of speaking, which is what all politicians actually do. They're all non-physical bullies. They count on others to do their dirty work. They're the ones who are arbitrarily passing laws that have created passive aggression in this country. With kids in school who aren't allowed to fight. And then they get the order followers to do their dirty work for them. And then thus, when the order follower takes the action to do the dirty work, that order follower is incurring the negative consequential effects of natural law, because karma is a real thing. And I'm going to get into a very personal story here on a bully that I've had to deal with. And he's a physical bully to certain people, and then certain other people, and I'm one of them, he can't be a physical bully with, so he resorts to a lot of psychological warfare, psychological games, a lot of lying, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of trying to talk you down to other people, and a lot of trying to play the victim. See, this is a big thing that those types of bullies want to do. They want to play the victim so they can set the stage for their bad behavior, for their bad actions or bad lack of actions, because in many cases, a lack of action will make them feel guilty. That guilt will drive them to all of a sudden get indignantly angry, because anger feels like a more powerful emotion than guilt. These people are predatory bitches of the most insidious kind, as far as I'm concerned. At least a physical bully may want to actually physically fight, because they feel like they have no choice. If you paint them into a corner, they'll at least maybe attempt to. The one I just talked about prior to that, which is my personal experience, won't do that. They just won't do it. They want nothing to do with it. But getting back to that political type of bully, that bully that's totally non-physical, because they can't physically be a bully, and they count on order followers to do their dirty work. Well, they create these policies, and it's been created in school, and I believe this started sometime in the 90s. I ended school, I graduated high school in 1989, so I'm kind of aging myself. And I'm pretty sure it's probably started in the mid 90s, but when they went to zero violence policies in school, when things were getting at their most violent, with psyop, false flag shootings, and real school shootings, it was in large. It was because of their no fighting policies, which created a lot of frustration and passive aggressive behavior. Hold on a second. And I think that's all part of the dark social engineering to create a society of very weak people. Okay. You're in school and there's a zero fight policy in between the other indoctrinational type things they're teaching you in school, how to follow orders, basically. And there's certain psychological tricks that teachers will use on anybody to get people to start following directions as soon as they walk into a classroom. And I can get into some of those later because I know them. And they actually aren't they can be, it's a tool. Some of these things, like psychology in itself, is a tool if you're going to use it in any kind of way. It can be used as a tool to help somebody, to get into their head if you're their fight coach, to get into their head if you're coaching them in any kind of way. So sometimes knowing psychology is what helps you to help somebody, okay? But when you know a little bit of psychology, you know how the human mind works, you can use it as a weapon. So it's just like anything else. It is a tool. But in these school systems, they have this zero fight policy where whoever's involved in a fight, both people are equally getting suspended. They don't care who started the fight. They don't care who threw the first punch. They don't care if someone was being bullied on. Both people are getting suspended. Okay. What that ends up creating is a very frustrating environment for a bunch of people who are going to still have arguments, and they try to do them in these passive aggressive ways. I'll tell another story. Probably about a decade ago, I was doing extra work as like security lunch aide at a grade school. And there was these two kids that were probably about 5 years old, and they got my attention. Okay, so they've already been indoctrinated into this type of schooling. And it was kind of cute, but it was hilarious. And they're both looking at me, and they're like, he's sitting close to me and I don't want him to sit there. And then the other kid says, he's sitting close to me and I don't want him to sit there. And I looked at the table and there's all these other empty chairs. I'm like, well, why don't you go way down there then? He's like, no, I don't want to move, but I don't want him to sit next to me. I was like, okay, why don't you go down there then? He's like, no, I don't want to move, but I don't want him to sit next to me. Like, you guys just don't like each other? Well, normally do, but right today we're not liking each other. I was like, you both have the seed of the universe within you. You will figure it out. And I walked away. Because this is the type of thing that they're breeding in school. And the passive aggressiveness of it, what happens is bullies are people with mental issues who need to be bullies, who have these righteous anger issues where they think they're always righteous because they're angry, because they didn't get their way, because they're a spoiled brat at home, or whatever the case is, and they're at school being a bully. And you got some person who's at school that's not wanting to bully anybody, that just wants to get good grades or wants to just, do whatever, and they start getting picked with. And then they feel like from their past experiences at the school that there's zero tolerance policies. And they really feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if they stick up for themselves and it turns into some type of fight, both of them will get equally punished. When I was in school, the one who started the fight would be the one who would get punished, not necessarily the one who won the fight. A lot of times the winner of the fight isn't the one who started it. It may look like that at the end if you're coming in at the end of a fight, but sometimes it's not. And I'm not saying I'm not pro-fighting. We should be teaching conflict management, conflict avoidance. There's things how to deal interpersonal communication. Some of these things are the type of things that should be taught in school, not what magma is. Okay, not what government is and how good it is for you and what it does for you. Here's what the branches of government do. Okay. It's almost as if they're indoctrinating our students and indoctrinating our kids to not stick up for themselves. Where only people in special uniforms wearing shiny things on their chest are the only ones who are allowed to legally use force. It creates all this passive aggressiveness because nobody will just speak straight up to somebody. I unfortunately still will. You have to get to a point in your life where you're willing to catch a case. Let people understand that they need to be a little more fearful of you than you are of the consequences of defending yourself. You have to let that be known. And again, I'm not advocating for violence, but when you're talking about kids getting into fights in school because of a bully and some non-bully person who isn't doing the bullying has been bullied on several times by this same person and also gets suspended for it, sooner or later, after a few years, a kid like that might feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because no matter what they do, it's not right. So these are the kids that sometimes I believe when you have an active shooter type situation that's going on at a school, the events that occur that aren't false flags, and believe me, I believe many of them are false flags, especially the ones that have happened from 2022 through, like just last year, because I broke those down at nauseum. I broke those down very intricately, and I wasn't seeing things that are that were conducive of what a real active threat environment would be. I can get into that later, but some of the real shootings that have happened, I'm going to surmise, are from very frustrated students who felt like there's nothing they can do right. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place because they kept getting the same type of punishment that a bully would get. And when it comes to that type of stuff, they say nothing. It doesn't matter who started the fight. All that matters, you're both involved in a fight and you're both getting suspended. And I say, no. The only thing that matters is who started the fight. Even if it's an argument, someone who starts an argument may not be the one who instigated the situation. There's way too many variables in this entire thing in human communications to be able to definitively say who was the one who started the altercation. If I start an argument with somebody because maybe they hit my sister or something, I'm going to be starting the argument. If that person throws a punch at me, they're the ones who started the physical altercation. They're the ones who should get the greater punishment when we get broken up for the fight. So in this case, justice should not be blind. It should be the whole thing about justice being blind is it is neutral. That's why it's got the scales. It's neutral. You're not being neutral, really, if you're just suspending the person who's not wrong. And you're only suspending the bully. Okay? Case in point here. Back maybe over a decade ago. 12, 13, 14 years ago. 15, 16 years ago even. My stepson was in high school. He was in like the 9th grade, and I was training him in martial arts, and he was getting kind of good. He was getting bullied on by this football player who was trying to beat him up outside after school. And it was still on school property though. And I was a little proud of this, I'm not going to lie. The football player kept throwing punches at him, kept trying to hit him, and he kept picking him off and, dodging him and avoiding him and moving around, and he didn't get hit not one time. But he also did not throw one punch back. He didn't even hit the kid. And kids were making fun of the football player that he lost the fight without even getting hit. So I was kind of proud of my son for doing that. He was turned into a defensive counterfighter at a young age. But me and his mother get called into the school, into the office, because he was involved in a fight, and I got livid. I completely got livid in there and told them, if you all are going to do this, I'm getting a lawyer. I'm going to the state. I am coming after you full force. He didn't throw one punch. He's not guilty of nothing. So parents, if you do have your kids in school, which I would say take them out of school and homeschool them. But if you do, you better be ready to stick up for them, especially if you know they didn't do nothing wrong. If you don't stand up for yourself, people are going to treat you how you let them treat you. And a lot of times women out there can be bullies to men in certain kind of ways if they know they've got a passive man who's not a bad man. And I don't mean passive. I mean just a man that they know that they trust that's not going to beat them up, which should be all men, to be honest with you. But sometimes they can be very manipulative and bully-like to you also. You have to know how to stand your ground in a way that lets them know in no uncertain terms, is this going to continue? And it doesn't matter what language you use. They need to see your determination. You need to teach people how to treat you. If you don't teach people how to treat you through your responses to their actions, they're going to keep walking all over you. And that is a fact. So that was the physical. That was sort of like a breakdown of the physical bully. The non-physical bully. Well, I was started getting into the non-physical bully. The most common type of bully that I've seen, and the one that I've had to deal with very recently. Hold on a second. Is the kind of bully that is a kind of a combination of both. That is, with people they know they can beat up physically, they will physically intimidate that person. Okay, I'll get into personal stories here of one degree or another, because I know somebody that I trained who ended up being like this, and it wasn't because of my training. It was because they ended up getting hooked on drugs, and they took too many drugs, and they took designer drugs, and they got themselves all effed up. Now, let me be clear here. As an anarchist, do all the drugs you want. If you're not bringing harm to anybody, you're only harming yourself. But there is a nuanced line here, because when you're doing drugs that mess up your brain to the point where you do victimize other people, now you victimized other people. I don't really care about what shape your brain is in because of the drugs you voluntarily chose to take. I'm not really worried about your mental health issues if you're a bully. It doesn't matter to me. Your actions matter. That's it. I'm not going to continually in my mind mull over the morality of, should I beat this dude's ass, or should I do this, or should I do that, because his mind's messed up, because he's done all these designer drugs and is a partial bully and a partial narcissistic manipulator. And hold on a second. Whoops. Smoking my pipe in the morning. Cherry tobacco. I don't really inhale it. I'm like Clinton. I don't inhale. But dealing with this type of bully, people who become bullies from substance abuse because they do something to their chemical, the brain, the chemical makeup in the brain gets affected. I feel for any human being, but if that makes them into a bully, screw them. I get extra offended, if you want to call it that. I get extra brave, if you want to call it that, when I see somebody bullying somebody else. I have an issue with it. I don't allow it to happen anywhere in my personal life. I never have. I never will. I can't stand bullies. This was part of the reason why I actually had some problems with certain people on police departments, because certain people on police departments had really heavy badges on their chest. They were bullies. And there was a lot of us who didn't like them. So you're dealing with all types of people in these types of work. Unfortunately, in that type of work, all of them are carrying guns, which is another thing some adult bullies who are not in law enforcement are always doing. They're always carrying guns because they are effing cowards. There's no reason to have a gun on you when you're going to have a debate or conversation with a family member, unless you're going to try to find an excuse to use it. So there's all kinds of different things you need to take in for your own safety when you're dealing with somebody who is a narcissistic, sociopathic, gaslighting, manipulating bully who wants to be seen as right and victimized and correct at all costs. This person is mentally ill. Again, do not let someone else's mental illness cause any conflict or moral conflict within your psyche, okay, on how to handle them, because they're a threat to you. And if they're a threat to you or people you love, you have a sacred right to defend yourself. And honestly, you have a sacred right to defend those you love. Man's law aside, although I think you should know man's law, because you don't want to end up needlessly doing a life sentence when you can do something else to not have to be put in prison, kidnapped and thrown in prison for exercising your right to defend yourself. When I teach self-defense, I try to teach a little bit of the law so people don't get themselves caught up in a trick bag. And laws just aren't just. We know that. Okay. But where was I at? I hate when I go off on tangents. I did this last week too. Maybe I do need to start keeping some PowerPoints or something in front of me. But anyway, when you're dealing with bullies of a non-physical nature, bullies that are chemically induced bullies. Like, I know a lot of drinkers who get this S on their chest, and it's not that Superman S. It's like the Bizarro S. They become like the Dark. They think that they're undefeatable, and they're like aggressive. They can become more aggressive as they drink, because when you drink, sometimes your inhibitions are lowered, and then the real you will come out. So when I was working in a certain line of work around certain people, if I couldn't get them to if they never wanted to have a drink with me or a drink or two with me, but they were known to drink with other people and drink on their own, I wouldn't trust them, because there was something they didn't want me to see when their guards started to get lowered or the inhibitions started to get lowered, which will start happening around beer number 3 or 4, depending on the weight of the person on their physical size. But I've always been the type of person that when I do drink, people like me. I'm a happy drunk. In fact, growing up, every time I've ever gotten beat up was when I was drunk, because I just was too happy and didn't see a sucker punch coming, or I didn't see something coming. And that's been years. This is back when I was very young, as a older teenager and whatnot. But so like if I see someone who I know is drunk, don't consider them to be harmless. I've seen them go from 0 to 60 in a second for no reason whatsoever. It's one of the worst mind-altering substances out there, and I don't have enough bad things to say about it. If you aren't somebody who can have that in some type of control, if it's an addiction and it's a demon you don't need to have, you need to get rid of it. And if you're around somebody who's like that, if you're around somebody who's a drug addict and a alcohol abuser, and they abuse all these different mind-altering substances at the same time, you need to be careful with them on what you're dealing with. I've personally seen one bully that I know who's hocked all his granddad's stuff that he had been left, and his girlfriend, who he was abusing, her grandmother's antiques, for drugs. And he's a real convincing narcissistic sociopath who will convince anybody of anything. And this is that guy who is a bully to those he can bully, but to those he can't bully, he wants to gaslight and play all these little games with. And it was really amazing for me to watch, because this is somebody I know. It puts me in a moral predicament, actually. When you're dealing with this type of a bully, this is the type of person who likes to use psychological warfare and what I would call psychological terrorism with people he knows, because he will get a rise out of somebody, try to argue with them, and then he ghosts them. And after a year or something, he tries to get back with them for a little bit. And this is a way a narcissist will keep their tentacles in their victim. They feed off of it. They're like vampires. And everyone always says, narcissists are very dangerous, and they actually are. And especially if they've got some type of secondary psychopathy from designer drug use or something else, but they're really not. I don't fear them at all. Okay. Because they too are cowards. And the way to deal with this person is, if someone starts to ghost you, you're going to naturally hit them up a couple of times and be like, what the F, WTF, right? They like that type of energy. Recently, I was telling a person who's like this that we were going to have a little come to Jesus moment. We were going to have us a little chat. And I was going to let him know exactly what he became, what he's turned into. And that, after I do that, there'll be nothing between us but space and opportunity. Because this person is a bully. He's a bully to the people he can bully. And he's a mental, narcissistic, psychological bully to those he can do that to. He uses people. He uses women specifically to live off of. He's never been able to live on his own. Okay, these people are parasites. Unfortunately, they may be connected to other people that you care about. Now, see, for me personally, I always will backtrack anything I'm talking about into from my own personal stories, because to me, when you work your way through it and you speak out about it, it's not only therapeutic, but honestly, you're teaching others who go through the same stuff, because it is a smaller reflection of what we're dealing with in the collective, what we're dealing with in the macrocosm of the world. So when you teach, you learn twice. And these people will put you in real moral conundrums, because there may be other people attached that you don't want to see them hurting in any kind of way. And, those types of texts, they feed off of. So after many, many months, I sent several of those, but they feed off of those. They'll continue to ghost you. They feed off those. They feed off that energy, because there's still a tentacle connected between you and them. And I'm using that as an analogy. But they're like vampires. They feed on that. They want the attention. They love being chased, because they had abandonment issues as a child, and they were babysat by violent video games, and they were spoiled and got everything else they wanted. They got everything but human attention. Okay. This is a person who, more likely than not, I had talked about defensive narcissistic disorder before, but there's another kind that's much more insidious, and it's a covert narcissist, because you won't know it first. They're very charming. And they don't like when their charm doesn't work. So the one way to test that is basically take a shit on their charm and watch how offended they get. Watch how they act. So after that, you let a little time go by, maybe a day or two, and you send a text that says something to the effect, you know what? Apology from you is not required with what I know about you. I don't want to ever see you again. If you ever see me, don't talk to me. Don't even make eye contact with me. And send nothing else, because they're used to getting 5-6 texts in a row. Send nothing else. It's what I did. And this ghosting person all of a sudden wanted to know why. And he sent me like 2-3 texts, which for him is blowing my phone up, because he's such a narcissistic fuck. Oops, Scott, I'm sorry. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to say that. But we all have that in our life. Let me just move on. We all have that in our life. And it's very telling to me when someone's ghosting you, but then you tell them you're done with them, and all of a sudden they want to know why. Because now they know that they have no control over you. that you no longer care about them. You no longer care about what they think. And many times this is a close friend in a friendship circle, or in many cases, it's a family member of some kind. This is why sometimes you have to abandon your certain members of your family and seek out and create your own. That you'll still have some problems with here or there, but there generally will be more love and respect without the expectation that I can treat you like crap and you're going to deal with the rest of your life. These are a very special kind of bully because they're the kind of bully that can't physically bully you. In this case, not physically bully me, but I know this person has physically bullied other people. And they're going to be confronted about that behavior personally from me. Because I won't abide by a woman getting hit. I won't abide by other people being threatened in disagreements. I just won't allow it to happen when I know it's happening and it's in my life and it's attached on the outskirts of my life. And I think all of us should be like that. We should all step in and not allow bullies to do their dirty, not allow them to bully women, not allow them to bully and yell at and be abusive to children, to not bully friends. They have to be, you have to out them. You have to publicly pull off that narcissistic mask and watch them fall apart. And that's how you defend yourself against them, really. Most people say just completely put them out of your life. Yeah, I'll do that, but I'll let them know where they stand with me first. So that way they never try it again. And there's strategies for that. And in future episodes, I'm probably going to go over strategies for that. So after I got hit with all these texts about why, which was amazing to me, I had one final text that I sent. And I'll read it on the air. I don't care. This is what I said. I know this is very personal, but it's not that personal. I'm not naming names. But if they are listening, they know who I'm talking about. I don't think I used any bad language in this. I didn't use no bad language in this either. Okay. So I sent a text that said, "You are a drug addict, alcoholic, narcissistic, sociopathic, serial liar who abuses women in front of children and are a bully coward in every way. I'm ashamed of the person you become. You need help and won't admit it. You're a coward in every way, hiding behind your mommy's skirt. Lose my effing number." That was a sentence by itself. "Do not ever make any kind of contact with me again in any kind of way, unless you have completed a rehab program. As of this text, I will never talk or contact you again." Now, there's a very legal and important reason why that type of text should be sent. If you've got somebody who's electronically harassing you, okay, so they've got a different phone number. They're hitting you up from two different phones. And in this case, this is what's happening. What I've watched occurred in the past. They hit up their target from two different phones. They make fake Facebook accounts and they'll hit them up. They'll email them. They'll do all this different stuff. Text them from different phones. Okay. This is a narcissist who's completely losing control of the person. The person doesn't want nothing to do with them anymore. They don't like that. It could be a dangerous situation, to be honest. In this case, I don't think it is. I highly doubt it is. But you have to actually say some words to the effect of what I said in that text. Do not contact me. I said, lose my effing number. Do not contact me again. Because you have to be able to show. Bad time to be calling me. You have to be able to show that you told them you didn't want to be bothered. See, in order for somebody to step over a boundary, to cross a boundary, for you to understand their physical intentions if they're in your physical presence, or to understand their intentions in any other manner, you first have to set a boundary. You have to create a boundary. And by telling somebody, don't ever contact me again. You've now set a boundary. So any contact they make with you after that has broken that boundary. Okay? This starts setting the stage legally for you to do something about it. And if you're ever put into a position where you have to defend yourself in some kind of way, you have a paper trail, an electronic trail of what was occurring. To my women out there, if you are being bothered by somebody who comes to your place, who keeps bothering you, and you don't want to be bothered anymore by them, and they just can't leave you alone. And not all women are innocent. Sometimes they want to trigger men. They want to do this. They want to do that. I get it. Women are not these angels. But that still doesn't mean a man has a right to hit her in front of her kids or yell at her or anything else. And I'm not going to pass judgment on anyone's problems. We all have these little ghosts from our past. We all have these traumas that we have to heal. And really, someone who's a narcissist has a lot of unhealed trauma, and they won't do their shadow work, and they won't admit it. And until they can do that, there's nothing that you can do for them. Which is why I actually said in the text, unless you have, completed a rehab program where you've dried out, you need to, if you're a woman that's going through this, you need to document it and take it to your local. I know I'm an anarchist and I don't like getting the police involved in stuff, but you need to file a restraining order on this person. After you do that, understand that a restraining order, and this is what I've taught my daughters, is nothing but a piece of paper. And any cop out there worth 2 cents will tell a woman, get somebody who knows how to shoot, who's certified in training people with firearms, learn how to shoot your gun safely and accurately, and have one with you, because a restraining order is only a piece of paper. Especially if you know the man you're dealing with happens to be armed a whole bunch of the time, because they're an insecure child. And for a lot of guys like that, carrying a gun is really just like some phallic measuring egotistical thing anyway. I don't carry a gun all the time. I know I do. I should. I have a responsibility to be honest with you. And I'm shirking that responsibility by not doing so. But I don't have some kind of gun fetish. I do carry them at certain times when I think I really, really need to. But I don't have one with me all the time. I know some people who don't do it for real protection. They do it as some type of phallic thing in their head because they're egotistical maniacs. There is a fine line between everything. And I do believe in the sacred right of self-defense. So carry one all the time if you want. I just don't. But the only way to deal with these people is to be very direct. And it's in the bigger scheme of things, it's what society has to do too. We have to be very direct with the bullies that are trying to bully us into submission. They're using all kinds of dark psychological warfare on us. They know the human psyche very well. And most people are just too mind controlled and distracted in this country to see what's going on. And I'm afraid that people are going to be so distracted that it's going to be too late by the time they realize what's going on. The number one thing in self-defense on a personal level is environmental and situational awareness. Okay. So what is the situational things going on in the world right now? What are the situational things going on in our country right now? What is our environment doing? You have to have environmental awareness of what's happening, situational awareness of what people are doing. And that's the only way we're going to be able to actually assert our will together and defend ourselves. We have to be, this country's filled with people with all kinds of guns. I see these memes that it's America's gun owners, largest standing army in the world. We're the ones holding the Satanists at bay. No, we're effing not. No, you're not. You're voters and you're individuals. One fire team of Marines, that's 4 or 5 Marines, can go up and down any large street, house to house, and clear each house, because they're only dealing with one gun owner in that house, maybe 2. You have to get together and team up. Anyway, peace. Till next week, stay safe. Number love.